Good morning, everybody. It's me, Mitch. I wanted to record this today. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately. Well, I always do a lot of thinking, but I've been doing a lot of thinking about what my life has become. Not only since I embarked on this carnivore lifestyle about 19 months ago, but especially what it's become since I decided that I needed to share my entire life with the world, and now with close to 27,000 of you for the foreseeable future. I don't think I'm really going to make any major changes. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. I enjoy it. And I'm going to keep and continue to refine the way and the how that I personally do carnivore in all aspects. The most important one of those aspects, believe it or not, is how I manage my kitchen. And I manage my kitchen almost as a business, because I was in the restaurant business. And I just can't help it. It's why I'm always wiping up after myself when I cook. It's why I always seem so organized, because I know how unorganized the kitchen can be, even when you're preparing something simple. So I thought it might be entertaining to take you on a little flashback down memory lane for the old guy here. And sometimes this is a little difficult for me, but I think it'd be interesting to share the glorious but brief and sad story of my venture in the restaurant business, which began about 20 years ago and ended in financial disaster when the economy collapsed around 2008, 2009. Just to give you a little insight as to what's involved, what I learned, and what I actually went through. So let's just quickly thumb through some pictures and I'll narrate a little bit for you. My restaurant was called Grouper and Chips. And later on, we changed it to Grouper and More as an attempt to rebrand it a little bit. I went to a development place called Baldwin Park, which was just being built. It was a beautiful place. They had retail space available in this lakefront center, and I rented this spot right there. Coming soon, Grouper and Chips. And the building wasn't done yet. There was no certificate of occupancy on it, but they cleared us to build the restaurant. So I started the build out inside the restaurant, installing tens of thousands of dollars worth of kitchen equipment and building a restaurant out of what was just a vacant bay in a building that wasn't yet completed. Now, what you're looking at now is an architectural model of what the lakefront center in this gorgeous new development in Orlando was supposed to look like. This area right here was the building where my restaurant was going to be, right there where the mouse is pointing, right down the street from a beautiful fountain, a big lake, huge lake. And what you don't see here is there was a pier built out onto this lake. And behind me was supposed to be a luxury condominium with a complete level of this underground parking devoted to retail parking for this retail center right here. And that's what I was sold when I went ahead and signed the lease and obligated myself for just a ton of money for the next 5 years. That's what the dream looked like. I was excited. I went ahead and designed the signs and the logos and the color schemes, and had this particular sign made for the front of it. This is a section looking down the street from where the restaurant was. It cost a lot of money to build this restaurant up. Here's the kitchen that we were building. They hung the sign. Meanwhile, the building still wasn't finished, but the restaurant was starting to come together inside. Kitchen was starting to come together. Kitchen equipment was delivered, including that gorgeous double oven 8-burner commercial stove, refrigeration and freezer units, all the venting and ducting that had to be put in, building out the front of the house, the service areas. As you can see here, to pass through to the kitchen. In this picture, I was standing in the dining room. Kitchen coming along. We had 3 back here undercover, 80-pound fryers, because we were going to be doing a lot of fried food. It's a lot of work to build this out. Got to the point where we were pretty well done and ready to open. Had pictures in the window of the different food we were going to serve that I shot down in the Naples restaurants. And here's pictures of the 2 Naples restaurants up in the window. And we're waiting. And it's now late 2005. We're ready to go. We've got a restaurant all built out with all the gadgets and gizmos in a beautiful downtown area. And the hammer came down. The economy was starting to taper off. Real estate market was in trouble. The developers of this particular whole community sold it. They sold it off to a real estate trust in California. So instead of dealing with one of the largest retail developers in Central Florida as my landlord, and the person responsible for actually getting the center finished, getting the certificates of occupancy, I'm dealing with a bunch of California real estate tycoons who are operating a real estate trust to provide tax loss incentives to their investors and could care less about whether they ever even finished building. Now, I, at that point, had a fortune invested in this restaurant. Everything I could beg, borrow, and steal. I had friends of mine invested in it. I sat for a year and a half. A year and a half in a restaurant ready to go with no electricity or running water because there was no certificate of occupancy yet on the building. So they couldn't hook the utilities up. And that was my life for a year and a half waiting. And they finally got it finished. So that in May of 2007, a full 3 years after I signed the lease on this space, I was able to open my restaurant. When that happened, we started buying kitchen equipment. We started stocking up, unpacking, washing, getting ready to actually open this restaurant. getting all the point of sale stuff installed, getting the soda machines, putting up artwork and decorations. And we picked a theme of nostalgia and old movies and Elvis and Jimmy Dean and Marilyn Monroe. These are some scenes of the restaurant. Over here in the corner, I had myself my own little office set up where I'd been sitting trying to do whatever I could for a year and a half. There's a lot to open a restaurant. Our slogan was Eat Grouper, Live Longer. This was a small restaurant, seated about 50 people. But the amount of equipment and the amount of dealings with all the authorities and licensing boards and health department and everything else is enormous for a small restaurant like this. The amount of stuff you had to buy to open a restaurant like this, commercial equipment, expensive equipment, was unbelievable. Here you can see those 3 gorgeous 80-pound fryers, 3 of them, to be able to handle the amount of food that we were going to put out here. Commercial dishwashers, storage space, refrigerators, freezers, huge ice machine, a rack with all the back-end stuff for the soda machines, computer equipment. And there's my office in the front of the house. And this is, like I say, this is where I spent a year and a half before this restaurant finally opened. We got the kitchen done. We got ready to go. I was so proud of actually building this from nothing. I took a lot of pictures, needless to say. We had our iced tea maker. We had our coffee makers. We had everything ready to go. All the equipment. And we got some, we got our tables and chairs. We had our menus printed. We were ready to go. And on May the 10th of 2007, we opened the restaurant. The place was gorgeous. The lakefront was beautiful. Even the bathrooms were nice. And I took pictures. I took pictures everywhere. Of everything. Some of them for insurance purposes, in case anything happened. I operated this restaurant. That's my son. Even he came to help out. I operated this, and that's some lobster tails, because we served some terrific, terrific food in this restaurant. It was enjoyable. I enjoyed operating it, and we ran it. There's some more unpacking pictures when the food started to show up. Fired up the stoves, we started to cook, and that right there was the crowning joy moment of my life after 3 years of work to get to this point, sitting out in my dining room at my impromptu desk where I spent 3 years of my life working. The first food came out of the kitchen. And that was what it was. And that was for me to eat. And that was, without a doubt, the best crab cake and shrimp over linguine that I had ever eaten in my life. I think maybe I was a little biased by it, but it was fabulous. Not carnivore, unfortunately. But who knew from carnivore back in 2007? And there I am, sitting at my beat-up old table that served as a desk, eating the first food to come out of the kitchen, thinking it took 3 years to prepare this food. And I got to tell you, I enjoyed it. All probably 180 to 190 pounds of me in the restaurant business with all the food I could eat. In retrospect, I look back and say, how smart was I really? And there is the heart healthy NutriClear frying oil that we used. That was supposed to be the healthiest oil that you could fry food in, and we were going to be health conscious. And that was canola oil. And little did I know that back in those days, I was poisoning all my customers with seed oils. And this is like a walk down memory lane for me. There are the fryers. These pictures may be a little out of order. There's my partner Francis back in the kitchen. There he is pouring that poison into the deep fryers. That was my kitchen staff back then. That was the wait staff. It was a real adventure. Running that restaurant, prepping the food, was a real adventure. I don't regret it. I don't regret it. It's a shame that the whole economy had to crash. That was my favorite spot, eating the food. I think that was a grouper sandwich I had there. I think it was a grouper sandwich, which was the best grouper sandwich on the planet Earth. There was me. Yeah, look at that. Holy cow. Look at that. That's Mitch. And look at that sandwich. Holy mackerel. Look at that sandwich. Is that gorgeous? Not something that I'd be eating today, but back then it was. It was such a fabulous adventure. These are two very close friends of mine that came in, other friends, people that came to share in the pre-opening of the restaurant, sample the food. We even had a beautiful outdoor dining area where we could sit and look at that beautiful lakefront. It was an absolutely beautiful spot. And it took 2 years before I lost everything I had, because the restaurant made no money. No matter how good it was, they never built the parking lot. They never built the condos. They never lived up to any of their promises, except raising the rent every year, because that's what the contract said. In 2009, I was forced to close the restaurant and walk away from it. It was the last time I ever worked. And for 10 years, I spent my life recovering from the last business disaster, which was this restaurant, and the disappointment of losing everything yet again. And after 10 years, I discovered carnivore and the carnivore lifestyle, a new purpose. It breathed new life into me. I'm excited about it. I love doing it. I have tremendous memories, hundreds of photographs of all the things I've done in my life. We'll say goodbye to my old restaurant. I haven't been back there since. Our customers loved it, loved it. It was an experience I'll never forget. There's a picture of me with Bill Nelson, who lived in Baldwin Park and came into my restaurant all the time. We sat and had some nice talks. He was a senator from Florida, and as you know, he actually went up on the space shuttle. Now he's the director of NASA. I spent a lot of time talking to Bill, and fascinating guy, and very interesting to hear him give me a firsthand account of what it was like to go up on the space shuttle. That was our fountain at night. And on that picture, I'll close it out. I'll close it out. A lot of nostalgia. And I've talked about this with too many people, but I thought you'd be interested. I thought maybe it'd be entertaining for you. And maybe a little break. Maybe a little break from talking about how to cook burgers and steaks. Thanks for watching. And with that, I'll close out this chapter, and we'll say goodbye forever to Grouper and Chips. And from here on, we will continue to take the rest of the day off and eat only meat.